Hey everybody, it's Scott. And in today's video, what I want to talk about is what are the elements of defense? I talk a lot about kind of organizing this game in terms of two different paradigms. Paradigm one is offense, and we'll talk a bit about what that means, and then defense. And so it's been really helpful for me in the course of my 20 years to break up businesses and look at it in those two paradigms. So when I speak about offense, what I mean about offense is generally there's somebody in the company who has a vision, who looks to build something, and all the elements around building something include things like landing pages, sales pages, what products we're going to pick, what channels we're going to market this over. Generally put, that's what I call offense, is someone who kind of carries the vision of the company and where they're going. Now, what falls right beneath that is this idea of defense and playing defense. And so what that means kind of in simple terms is everything, all the work that's created around supporting this great vision or supporting the offense. So it's one thing to have landing pages set up, to have merchant accounts in place, to have kind of like traffic thrown at an offer. But what I want to focus on today are what are all of the things that you need in order to support that offense. And so I'll just kind of go through quickly each of these line items to make you or help you understand kind of what are some of the elements of playing defense. So when I speak about defense, and really the topic of this conversation really arose as I contemplated my first partnership with NativePath and my partner, Chris. And I simply asked the question, what do you hate doing? I knew that we were both fairly offensive players, but in knowing that when you have two offensive players and no one to clean up the mess behind you, it's going to create an absolute mess. So I asked the question, what do you hate doing? And I took it upon myself to do the things that he hated doing so that I could perfectly position him to play offense. And the answer came in just about 2.5 milliseconds. So what he hated doing was dealing with people, dealing with HR issues, accounting, finance, taxes, customer service, merchant accounts, vendor management, supply chain, setting up the meetings, the infrastructure on how we communicate. So that really gave me a lot to work on. And I think that up to that point in my career, I had been blessed by having people do all that stuff for me. And to be honest, I don't know that I had disdain for that, but I didn't really value that as much as I do now. And so really, when you look at defense, it's around building everything to support the offense. So if you take a look at customer service, it's when you have a scaling offer that's growing quickly, one of the things that'll take it down really quickly is if you don't have really good customer service. And that looks at things like refunds, chargebacks, how quickly you get back to the customer, what do you say to the customer, these types of things. It looks at things like merchant accounts. We want to make sure that we don't have just one single point of failure as it relates to how we're getting paid. So if you're all on Stripe or you just have PayPal, you want to look to diversify that so you have many, many different ways to get paid. It looks at things like supply chain, making sure that if you're a physical products vendor, you have multiple ways to not only get your product built, so you don't have one formulator, but also how do you get your product distributed, right? So you have one fulfillment house, right, that handles all of the product. It looks at things like taxes, insurance, reporting, all this stuff that I would normally have considered really boring and mundane. I've really fallen in love with because I think that that really makes the difference. Having a lot of that stuff in place, or at least efforts into having that stuff handled, really is the hallmark between companies that grow really big and then stay there and like keep growing versus companies that grow really big and then just absolutely collapse. I've seen kind of time and time again companies collapse because they failed to kind of take into account this element of defense and making sure that as the company grows, you're backfilling it with systems in place to handle all the things that as entrepreneurs, we might find super boring. So in terms of talking about defense, these are some of the things I'm really referring to. And again, it's taxes, reporting, finance, people, all the things that go along with kind of supporting a business, merchant accounts, customer service, supply chain, kind of like business development might also be kind of defense, although that's debatable. So those are some of the elements of defense. So as you think about your own business, think about, kind of taking your eyes off a little bit the offensive piece of it, the landing pages and the traffic, and looking at everything else that goes to support that ball moving forward. I hope that helps and gives you some a little bit more perspective, some more perspective on what I mean by defense. And we'll talk about these topics in greater detail down the road. Thanks.